feel very called to become a member of the Catholic Church.
Love the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
2 minutes past the hour. We're giving you a very warm welcome here on EWTN Radio's Open Line on a Thursday when we talk about new evangelization, how to speak to someone who may be away from the church, maybe fallen away, or maybe has never been part of the Catholic Church, and you want to share that good news of the gospel with them, but you're afraid if you say the wrong thing, you might push them farther away. So what do we say? How do we say it? When do we say it? And also, what do we not say? All these questions you can share with us today with our expert today filling in for Father Larry Richards. We have Dr. Pia de Solenni, who is the Dean at the Augustine Institute in Orange County campus, and she's also a moral theologian. And my name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm sitting in today for Jack Williams. So it is the team of people substituting other people. And then Mr. Michael McCall is our producer. He's substituting for me, who I'm a normal producer. So the only one who is not being substituted by anyone is Mr. Matt Gubinski, who is our phone screener. We can't substitute Mike. We just can't do that. But we're going to have a wonderful show here on Open Line this hour. The phone lines are open right now. If you have a question for Dr. Pia de Solenni, moral theologian, if you want to ask about how to address what the Catholic Church teaches with people who may be fallen away or just have never been part of the Catholic Church, and do that with a smile and with a warm embrace, Dr. Pia de Solenni will be here all hour. And the number is 1-800-585-9396. That is the number to get in. The quicker you call, the quicker you can get in. We also have an international line. If you're outside of North America or Canada, you can also call 1-205-271-2985. I also want to give a very warm welcome. If you are tuning in through YouTube, you can see that in here in the studio with us in our Birmingham headquarters here of EWTN, Dr. Father, you're a doctor of souls. Father Jose Ismael Torres is here with us. Welcome, Father. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Hello, Elena. Hello, Michael. Hello, everyone. I am happy with you and with your audience.
Thank you very much for being here with us. Where are you from, Father?
I'm from Mexico. My diocese, San Luis Potosí, Mexico.
So we send a greeting out to all of our listeners in Mexico or maybe from Mexico, anywhere around the world. We're delighted to have you here in our studios, Father. Father Jose Ismael is our intern priest this summer here at EWTN and going to all different departments. We are delighted to have you here and we're going to have you sit with us here. Father Ismael speaks, of course, Spanish, which is your native language, Italian. English.
Oh, I speak a little bit English. I don't speak English, sorry, but I stay here to learn every day.
Very good. You have a great ear for languages, Father, and Latin maybe? Do you speak a little bit of Latin?
Latin, a very little. In my country, Mexico, we speak, we learn in seminary a little Italian, a little Latin, but in Rome, a lot Italy, all people, all priests learn Italy in the university, in the Vatican.
Yes, well, it is very important, and it comes with the job as a priest. So a warm welcome to you, Father. Thank you for joining us. And again, our phone lines are open here on EWTN's Open Line. You can call in with questions for our guest of the hour, Dr. Pia de Solenni. Dr. Pia, I want to give you a very warm welcome, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, hi, Elena. It's great to be with you again.
We are always delighted when you can join us for Open Line from your Orange County studios. We also want to thank Ian Cabrera and Ryan Lilliengren for making all the technicals possible to be able to have you halfway around the country. And we know that you have this beautiful gift of setting the record straight when it comes to theology and to moral theology, which is your area of expertise. You do it with such a warm embrace and such a sweet voice. We really do appreciate that. And we want to start our conversation today with our listeners because we have you connected today with one of the articles that you wrote a little while back, a few months ago, about the divorced and civilly remarried, and can they have access to Holy Communion? And I want to begin by asking you to give us a summary of what is the status right now for receiving Holy Communion for those who have been divorced and civilly remarried. Is there anything new under the sun here?
Well, there isn't anything new. I mean, the media is saying one thing, and I think there is a contingency in the church which would like to see some changes. And I think including Pope Francis, I mean, on a personal level, as Jorge Bergoglio, I think there are many indications that he would like to see some changes. As Pope Francis, we have the document Amoris Laetitia, so that's the document that came out of the two synods. And it's a very long document on the family. It has a wonderful anthropology at the beginning of the document. Actually, I think the anthropology runs through it. But there's one section that deals with this very difficult question. And I think if people only read that section or highlight particular footnotes, they might think that there's a change in teaching. If you read the document from start to finish, the Pope is clear that there's no change in teaching on this matter in the church. He's also clear that the question of annulment has already been addressed by, he issued 2 motu proprios to really, in many ways, make the system, the process, something closer to what it is here in the United States. In the United States, we were kind of ahead of the curve in streamlining the process and not making it something agonizing that lasts 10, 15 years and costs thousands of dollars. So he specifically says in the document, he's addressed the question of annulment. Now, when he addresses the pastoral situation of the divorced and remarried, he's talking about the situation of the penitent, somebody who comes to confession, and how should the confessor be engaging with that person. And so he has some very clear pastoral guidelines. And one of them is, first of all, let's figure out this person's situation and how do we help them rectify their situation if it needs to be rectified. So again, there's all sorts of clarifications that need to be made. The divorced and remarried may receive communion if they are living as brother and sister. And I know that, again, in the secular world, that's something that's kind of laughed about. I have found in my experience that there are a number of couples living this heroically. And they are also couples, I wish we would get more testimonies from them, because the stories that they tell about how the impact that this has on their marriage, on their spirituality and their spiritual life, it's tremendous, and it is a process of growth. It's really hard, and it is challenging. We cannot deny that. But I think it is naive to say, well, it can't be done or it's not being done. It's unrealistic, because people are doing it, and I would love to hear more from those people. Secondly, if the penitent comes to confession, and here there was the Vade Mecum for confessors that was published several years ago, and I would, it dealt with the question of, particularly one of the questions was on contraception, and so there was a question there. What happens if you have somebody who comes to the confessional and says, my spouse insists on using contraception, and I don't want to. Am I culpable? So this document from the Vatican said that in this case, assuming that the penitent is not themselves using the contraceptive, that it's the other spouse that's using it, that they can in fact engage in marital intimacy without the guilt of sin, because because obviously marital intimacy is important for the union of the marriage, right? and that they themselves incur no sin if they have made it very clear to their spouse that this is not something that they want to do, and the spouse insists on it, we see what we understand there is the good of the marital union. So the parallel from that we see Pope Francis, I think, expounding upon, and this has been, again, consistent teaching. So, let's say somebody is divorced and remarried civilly. They go to confession. The priest has to hear, what the priest has to hear is that that person is willing to make a change to the situation, right? They have a purpose of amendment. When they leave the confession, they are telling the priest that when they leave the confession, they are going home. They're going to talk to their spouse about this. They have a plan in place. Maybe one of them's going to sleep on the couch. Maybe they're going to start talking to an annulment advocate. You have no idea how many times we have people in situations where they are divorced and remarried and actually have never even begun the annulment process, right? And again, here in the United States, we have tremendous resources for this. So there has to be some step, again, this purpose of amendment. And if the priest sees that, and there are no grounds of scandal, that person is free to receive communion. So and again, the priest has to understand from that person a firm decision to change the situation. Now, could it be that person walks out and has a conversation with their spouse and they make all of these resolutions and then things fall apart? Yeah, but isn't that what happens to each one of us when we walk out of confession?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a very nuanced conversation. It's not opening the door for the divorced and remarried to receive communion unless they're living as brother and sister or have made a purpose of amendment, which would ultimately lead to living as brother and sister.
That is very interesting. If you have questions about maybe a relative, maybe it is your personal case about being divorced and civilly remarried, what is your standing with the church? Here is your expert, Dr. Pia de Solenni, on Open Line. And you can call in 1-800-585-9396. Dr. Pia is a moral theologian and can explain this very well. If you have other questions about the new evangelization, how to bring people back to the faith, this is your number, 1-800-585-9396.
I'm Raymond Arroyo with Mother Angelica, A Remarkable Life. In the year 1943, young Rita Rizzo, Mother Angelica, was suffering from such terrible stomach maladies, she braved a blizzard to come here, to the home of Rhoda Wise. Now, Miss Wise was a local mystic in Canton, Ohio, and a purported healer. She greeted Rita at the door, brought her into her bedroom, and sat her in this chair. Now, Miss Wise contended our Lord sat in this chair mystically when they visited from time to time. She didn't touch Rita, she didn't pray over her, she just handed her novena to St. Therese of the Child Jesus and told her to pray that prayer. 9 days later, young Rita's stomach symptoms vanished, and thus began a lifelong love affair with God and untold works. Stay with EWTN as we celebrate the life and legacy of Mother Angelica.
Have you heard about Church Pop? It's the newest member of the EWTN family with new online Christian content that's fun and inspiring every day. Find it on Snapchat, Instagram, and on the web at churchpop.com.
This is Al Cresta, host of Cresta in the Afternoon, and Cresta in the Afternoon looks at all of life through the lens of Scripture and the teaching of the Catholic Church. Church teaching is the light by which we view the world, and so we'll explore everything, from abortion to Hollywood, and from the First Amendment to the United Nations, and everything in between. Following St. Paul, we're seeking transformation through the renewing of our minds. So that's Cresta in the Afternoon with me, Al Cresta, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is John Martinoni, host of Open Line Monday.
Hello, this is Archbishop Charles J. Chaput, the Archbishop of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
This is Jerry Usher, co-host of Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Thanks for listening to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Welcome to Open Line. If you're just now joining us, we are having this hour our very own expert moral theologian here to answer your questions about new evangelization, about how to bring people back to the faith. If you are exploring coming back to the faith, if you want to talk to somebody about your faith, here is Dr. Pia de Solenni filling in for Father Larry Richards this hour. The number's 1-800-585-9396. That number again is 1-800-585-9396. And we have Glenda listening to EWTN radio through Sirius XM 130. Glenda, what is your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni? Go right ahead.
If a person is baptized Catholic as a baby and they had went to Catholic schools, kindergarten, first grade, was pulled out of that, put in public school, taken out of the church, hadn't returned to the church for many, many years, lived a pretty wild life, married, young man, had the marriage annulled, a few years later married someone, was married for many years, divorced. Are they able to go back to the Catholic Church and receive communion and forgiveness?
Glenda, thanks for your call. I mean, what I'm getting from what you've said, and again, I don't know all the details, it sounds like that person needs to go and spend some time with a good confessor, and I would say maybe talking to a pastor about what it would mean to come back to the church, followed by a good confession, and then I think that person would probably be in good standing to go to communion, because what I'm understanding is they are not married now. Is that correct?
They are not, no.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a question of truly of reconciliation and the sacrament of penance, but I would advise finding a good pastor, a good priest to talk to about what that journey home means, so that they don't think it's just, well, I walk into the little box or I go into the confessional and, something magic happens, but really, what's the transformation? I would also point you to one of our resources, Augustine Institute. We have the program called Symbolon, which is on formed.org, and individuals, parishes, or dioceses can subscribe there. And Symbolon is just a great way to begin getting the basics of the faith. We've had some tremendous feedback on it, and it might be a great resource for this person to understand just the basics of the faith. And then we also have Beloved, which is a marriage prep and marriage enrichment program, and that might help just to further demonstrate the Church's teachings on marriage. But I think, a conversation with a good priest and a good confession, and that person's ready to go.
Does that answer your question, Glenda?
It does. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And thank you very much for calling in and listening there. We greet all of our EWTN radio listeners tuning in through Sirius XM 130. If you have Sirius in your car, or if you're about to buy a car, or maybe get a new car or a used car, make sure it has Sirius XM so you can tune in to channel 130 and have EWTN in your car. And we go to our next caller, who is Diane in Sugar Land, Texas, listening to EWTN through Guadalupe Radio Network. Diane, what is your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni?
Yeah, I don't know if y'all addressed this. My ears perked up. The radio was turned down because I thought I heard something about marriage and divorce. But I've been, or remarriage, I've been looking into, again, Catholic teaching on that. But I'm not clear, I haven't come to yet, how it would be handled, and if it's a case-by-case of whether somebody who's divorced, remarried, but it's not a valid marriage because it just, the first marriage was intact. And now this person should they, and this is post-children, they're an older couple I'm thinking of. Now, they aren't Catholic, so I know that changes things since they're not in the church. But it's just got me thinking, and if I interact with her, I kind of want to know how to tell her, at least the Catholic belief perspective. Would they have to get a civil divorce, or is there a choice between living together as brother and sister? How's that determined?
Well,
and what are the choices there?
Well, Diane, first of all, I would back up. How do you know that the first marriage was valid?
Well, that's a problem, too. I don't, because we're talking about a Protestant. So it's just gotten me thinking. I'd like the Catholic. I guess I know that you would go back, but let's just say Catholics. Let's just say this is Catholics. And it's not, the first marriage was intact. It was valid, because I understand all that well. I'm just not clear on, do they have to absolve that second so-called marriage that isn't really a marriage, or could they choose to just live as brother and sister? Are there options, in other words?
Yeah, no, I think in most cases they would be able to choose to live as brother and sister. The church recommends that they dissolve the union if it's possible. If it's not possible, I mean, sometimes there are family obligations or there's just the relationship requires both people. Somebody needs care. These are really pastoral questions, and they're situations that should be discussed, I would say, with a really good priest who knows these issues inside and out. I would also just challenge them to see what can be done. I mean, again, if they're interested, first of all, they're not in the church, so find out if they're interested in coming into the church, which is that's a whole project in and of itself. But then secondly, you never know. The first marriage may not have been valid, and people who are not Catholic actually do go through the annulment process at times for various reasons. Even when they're coming, I should say, especially when they're coming into the church, there are just so many unknown factors. So generally speaking, it is permissible for the couple to live as brother and sister, and to be able to participate fully in the life of the church if they are Catholic. But again, it's such a pastoral situation that I really would suggest sitting down with a priest who knows this material inside and out.
Does that answer your question? Hello, does that answer your question? Oh, I think we just lost her. Well, we continue, and that actually opens a line for you, 1-800-585-9396. That number again is 1-800-585-9396. And so, Dr. Pia, every situation really has a particular detail to it. What is your best recommendation to go up to the parish priest, or how do you even start the process if you are in a divorced and civilly remarried situation?
I would say, first of all, contact your parish and find out who the annulment advocates are in the parish. See if you can talk to your pastor. If you kind of hit a wall or you feel that personalities don't quite click, because, these are very, very sensitive issues, go to the diocese and ask, at the tribunal for to be able to meet with somebody in the tribunal. They're probably going to say, well, have you gone have you talked to an annulment advocate? Have you talked to your pastor? But there are a lot of different avenues. And, I think people working on this issue within the church really understand how sensitive it is, and that sometimes you need to find the right person to talk to.
Sure.
And I was just talking with one priest who was sharing that he's found cases where people have submitted the paperwork for the annulment, they don't get the annulment, and it's because they tried to do it on their own, and they needed someone, an expert, an annulment advocate or a pastor or a canon lawyer, someone who's really well versed in this, to be able to walk them through it, because sometimes they miss points. They're telling the story. They have a narrative, right? We all have a narrative about our situations, and we need this expert to kind of help us identify what may or may not be the key points that would be relevant. So I would just encourage people to begin at the parochial level, at the parish, and see what the resources are there. And if those are not satisfactory, then I would call the diocese.
You're listening to Open Line here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Our guest today is Dr. Pia de Solenni. She is a moral theologian, and she's also the Dean of the Augustine Institute, the Orange County campus out there in Orange County, California, where she is joining us from through the miracles of technology. And we thank Dr. Pia and also Ryan Lilliengren and Ian Cabrera for making this broadcast possible. And this is Elena Rodriguez sitting in for Jack Williams. Today here we are opening our phone lines for you to be able to talk about how to bring people back to the faith, the new evangelization. What is the new evangelization? We started our show talking about the access to communion for the divorced and the civilly remarried. And we are going to continue to take your phone calls for the remainder of the hour. The number is 1-800-585-9396. That number again is 1-800-585-9396 if you want to call in. If you're outside the United States or Canada, we have a phone number for you as well, and that is that's the country code, 1-205-271-2985. Again, our international line is 1 205-271-2985. And when we come back, we are going to be talking to Steve, Elizabeth, Lorraine, Raymond, and you here on EWTN Radio's Open Line with Dr. Pia de Solenni, moral theologian. Stay tuned for more. We will be right back.
This is Jerry Usher, host of Vocation Boom Radio, heard Saturdays at 5 p.m. right here on EWTN Radio. Very, very happy to have Father Luke Strand join me this Saturday. He's the Director of Vocations for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. He has two brothers, blood brothers, who are also priests. So that'll make for an interesting conversation about brothers being priests and vocations in Milwaukee. That's Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.
60 Seconds with Father Mitch Pacwa.
You can only say that you're saved in Christ and that you act in cooperation with Him. That's the only way you can do it. And God's plan has ordained that the efficacy of the exercise of the ministry is also conditioned by greater or lesser human receptivity and participation. Now let me go through that. The way that God set things up is that how efficacious, how well the sacraments work, if you will, and how well we cooperate with them depends on how much more we receive or how much less we receive. Are we receptive or are we closed-minded? I can pour a bucket of water over your head, but if your mouth isn't open, you're not going to get a drink. Same thing here. If your mind and heart are not open to Jesus, I can pour infinite amounts of grace all over you, but you're not going to receive a saving grace. That's what's key here.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
For a complete list of the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network AM and FM stations across America, go to EWTN.com. Look for the radio pull-down menu and select AM/FM stations. The list is updated regularly, so visit often. Again, go to EWTN.com. Look for the radio pull-down menu and select AM/FM stations. Also at EWTN.com, you'll find out how to listen to us on the web, on shortwave, and in some countries on satellite. You'll find it all on EWTN.com.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
29 minutes past the hour here on EWTN Radio, bringing you Open Line Thursday live across the country, around the world, with our guest filling in for Father Larry Richards. Today is Dr. Pia de Solenni, moral theologian and also the Dean of the Augustine Institute, Orange County campus out there in beautiful California. If you are listening through FM 100.9 Light of Truth Radio, KSMJ, in Edmond, Oklahoma, we want to invite you to call in Open Line with a question for Dr. Pia, because we want to inaugurate our listeners from our newest station, now part of the EWTN radio family, FM 100.9 Light of Truth Radio. What a beautiful name. KSMJ, serving Edmond, Oklahoma. Our warm embraces and congratulations to Jeff Fennell and the great team at Oklahoma Catholic Broadcasting. That is FM 100.9 KSMJ, serving Edmond, Oklahoma, the newest member of the EWTN radio family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We also want to extend a warm welcome to all of our listeners participating in today's show, starting with Steve, who is our next caller. Steve is in Seattle, Washington, listening to EWTN radio through Sacred Heart Radio. Steve, what is your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni?
Thank you. It's a privilege to talk to both of you. I was married and divorced as a Protestant, so I had a divorce in my background, and then I got married as a Protestant again. And 10 years into that marriage, I now went through RCIA. I'm joining the church, but my current wife is Protestant, and she's not joining. And I filed for an annulment with an advocate. That's a very good advice that you gave. And so now I'm waiting, but I made a firm commitment that I didn't want to be in sin during this process as I started to believe in the church. And so I made a firm commitment not to participate in the marital act. But when you talk about living as brother and sister, is there any other things that would include, because I don't participate in the marital act, but we got kids, grandkids, own a business together, we travel, I introduced her as my wife. Can you explain a little bit more detailed definition of what it would be to be considered as living in brother and sister? Because I feel I still owe my wife, emotional support and the kind of support she would receive as a wife, and so I just feel like I'm walking a fine line there, and I would like your input on it.
Hi, Steve. Yeah, it's great. A great question, and I think the terminology "actually living as brother and sister" doesn't help a whole lot, because, as you point out, it draws into question some of the other aspects of married life. I mean, children, and you have a business together, and you travel together, and you're not going to introduce her to someone as not your wife. I think primarily it refers to the physical intimacy aspect, and in many cases, couples are advised, to try and find separate sleeping arrangements. But it refers primarily to that physical aspect, because you're going to have to be present together as husband and wife as much as you can be, for your children. And as you said, you have a life together, and you don't want to pull back emotional support either. So the concentration really is on the physical intimacy, because that is a very real part of marriage. That is the sacrament of marriage, and so what we're aiming for is for the couple not to defile what is the core sacramental part of marriage. It doesn't mean, though, that you don't offer emotional support for your spouse, that you don't refer to your spouse as your spouse, that you're not, present for family things. All those things are exactly, those are the reasons for continuing in the relationship as husband and wife while living as brother and sister until this irregularity is resolved.
Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yes, thank you very much. That exactly answers my question.
And God bless you. I mean, I think, I encourage you to try and journal and keep notes of what's happening during this time, because I think you'll be able to be a powerful witness for other people, even on a very personal level, because so many people are in the same situation.
Mm. Thank you very much, Steve. Listening there in Seattle, Washington, we go to Elizabeth, who is in northern Kentucky, listening to EWTN Radio through Sacred Heart Radio. Elizabeth, your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, Doctor. Thank you for taking my call. It was more really a comment that I had. You were saying earlier that, I think I heard you say that when a married couple, when one of them insists on the use of contraception, the other one does not incur sin and is allowed to partake in that contraceptive intimacy. But you cited that the good of the marriage is the reason for that. However, I've often heard that contraception is one of the biggest destroyers of marriage. And I don't remember where, but I think I read somewhere that if your spouse uses contraception, that you are not allowed to partake in that intimacy.
Okay, I'm not sure where you read that, but what I would recommend is that you look up the Vade Mecum for confessors. So it's VADEMECUM for confessors. It'll pop up on the Vatican website, and it came out in 1997 from the Pontifical Council for Family. This has been long in effect, well accepted, and you can feel free to, if you want to go to my website, which is moraltheologian.com or piadesolenni.com, and email me. I'm happy to send you the link to it. There's a very specific section in there, and it's number 13, and it details, and it says special difficulties are presented by cases of cooperation in the sin of a spouse who voluntarily renders the unitive act infecund, in other words, infertile. In the first place, it is necessary to distinguish cooperation in the proper sense from violence or unjust imposition on the part of one of the spouses, which the other spouse, in fact, cannot resist. This cooperation can be licit when the three following conditions are jointly met. So the first condition is the action of the cooperating spouse is not already illicit in itself. All right. Second, when there's proportionally grave reasons exist for cooperating in the sin of the other spouse. And that's where we talk about the good of the union. Mm-hmm. And so these are prudential issues, right? And very, very serious, not to be taken lightly. The third criteria here is when one is seeking to help the other spouse to desist from such conduct patiently with prayer, charity, and dialogue, although not necessarily in that moment, nor on every single occasion. So it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card for the spouse that's faithful and faithful to church teaching. It means that spouse still has to be actively engaged at a minimum in a silent way in seeking the conversion of the other spouse, because again, at the end of the day, our job as spouses is to help each other get to heaven. Mm-hmm. So it is a very, very particular situation. And I would suggest that if you're thinking of somebody, or if it's yourself in this particular situation, examining this text prayerfully to see if it really fits the situation, and then also in conversation with a good confessor. But the church does see that there's the overarching good of the union, and while contraceptive is a grave evil, I mean, it's very serious, and it's not good for marriages in general. We're looking at a very particular situation here where the faithful spouse is, still trying to hold up to the good of the marriage, and the good of the marriage can demand physical intimacy.
Does that answer your question, Elizabeth?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Can you tell me the name of that document again?
Sure. It's called the Vade Mecum for Confessors, and Vade Mecum is V as in Victor, ADEMECUM for confessors. And make sure you get the one on the Vatican website. That would be vatican.va, but it came up very quickly when I searched for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much.
Very good. And Elizabeth, if you have any questions about which document it is and you need further clarification, Dr. Pia, your website is moraltheologian.com?
.com or Pia de Solenni. Usually moral theologian is easier to spell. So.
Sure. Yes. Yes, very good. I just have a curiosity here, Dr. Pia. What does vademecum? Is that from Latin? What does it mean?
To go with one.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To accompany.
So just this is like a book of regulations about confession, and like your little take-along book. In other words,
it's an accompaniment for confessors to deal with particular difficult situations regarding family and marriage.
Okay, well, that is always good to know. Lots to learn here on EWTN Radio's Open Line on a Thursday today with our fill-in host, Dr. Pia de Solenni. And she's a moral theologian, also the dean of the Augustine Institute in Orange County, California, filling in for Father Larry Richards. The number to call, 1-205-271-2985. Stay tuned.
Whether you're at home, at work, in the car, you can follow what he teaches 24 hours each day. We're EWTN Radio.
And just to let you know, I'm a returning Catholic because of EWTN. Bless you guys and keep it up.
And you're invited to visit our website too. Just log on to www.ewtn.com. That's www.ewtn.com.
It's the start of a new day for Morning Catholic Radio.
Be wise about who you are, understanding your weaknesses, and avoid those people, those places, and those occasions of sin. That's one of the things that we say in our act of contrition. Realize you are weak even if you haven't done that sin for a while.
In the recovery community, we put it this way. You have to find new playmates and a new playground.
Amen.
Morning Glory, Catholic from the start. Weekday mornings, 7 Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Open Line, 40 minutes past the hour here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Open Line. You can also join us via YouTube webcast. Our social media manager, Mr. Jeff Person, nice person, is on the chat. And you can also send in your questions via the chat. The way you can do that is you can go to youtube.com and then type in the search bar EWTN channel. and that'll take you to our live webcast of Open Line, and you'll see the chat show up there. And you can also watch. You won't see Dr. Pia de Solenni because she's out in our Orange County studios in California. You will see only what is happening on this Radio Studio 1, which is in our Birmingham headquarters for EWTN. You'll see myself, Elena Rodriguez. You'll also see our guest for the day here in our studios, Dr. I'm calling you doctor again, Father, Doctor of Souls, Father Jose Ismael Torres, who is joining us today for the broadcast. He speaks Italian, Spanish, a little bit of English, and he is our intern priest this summer here at EWTN. So we're delighted to have you. Let's go to Susan, who is listening in Iowa to EWTN radio through the EWTN app, which, by the way, is a free download. Susan, how's that EWTN app working for you? Susan?
Oh, are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, Elena, first I have to tell you that I've long loved your voice. It's very uplifting and melodic. It's almost like listening to a melody. You have a beautiful voice.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Dr. Pia.
Please go right ahead.
All right. I have a very dear friend that suffers by not going to the Eucharist because she was raised Catholic. She left the church, got married in a Protestant religion, church. The friend has returned to the Catholic Church, and wants the spouse to get married in the Catholic Church so she can have her Catholic marriage. Mm-hmm. The spouse said that the marriage is just fine the way it was, and it's good enough, got married in the spouse's church, and what's wrong with that, and just refuses to get married in the Catholic Church. So is this friend truly to deny herself going to the Eucharist? As far as I know, they're past childbearing age. I don't know what that has to do with it, but I guess that's all I know about it.
Okay.
Yeah, Susan, I think as long, again, just based on the general outline that you've given me, as long as they're continuing to live as married people, in other words, engaged in marital intimacy, not living as brother and sister, she would not be able to go to receive Holy Communion. I want to make 2 points here. One is I would really encourage her in a devotion to spiritual communion. And in fact, that's something that many of us could grow in because not all of us are, when we go to Mass, are disposed to receive communion. And a lot of us, we go when we probably should be sitting back in the pew and making a spiritual communion. So I'd really encourage her to grow in that devotion. It's something that all of us can grow in. Secondly, we've had some interesting experience with our program Symbolon. So this is at the Augustine Institute, and it's an online program where you can get the DVDs, and it explains the basics of the faith. And we have heard from churches, from pastors, who've had situations where it's been precisely a case like the one that you're describing, where one spouse refuses to go along with it, refuses to come to the church, to marry in the church, etc. Well, what happens is when people can learn about the church in the kind of safe space and privacy of their own home, sometimes their guard comes down and they're able to enter in a little more. They're able to enter into this idea that before, the idea maybe of going and sitting and talking to a priest scares them or makes them uncomfortable. Maybe they don't want to go to RCIA, whatever. They've got all sorts of things set up, in blocks in their mind. And so sometimes it's just finding a way to begin the conversation in a safe space is a start. And so we've heard anecdotally of a few couples that have where one spouse has introduced the conversation using Symbolon, just saying, hey, will you watch this with me? And by the end of it, the other spouse there is an openness to considering the church and so forth. So that program is called Symbolon, and we have it at the Augustine Institute. You can watch it online at our formed.org, which is an online platform. Or if you go to the Augustine Institute website, there should be a place to order it. You can also order it, I think, through Ignatius Press and Lighthouse Catholic Media.
Does that answer the question, Susan?
It's spelled S as in Sam, Y, MB as in boy, OLAN?
LON.
LON.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a wonderful suggestion. All right. Oh, thank you very much.
And just encourage her to keep praying. We're coming up to the Feast of St. Monica, and look what, years of prayers produced 2 saints, and who knows how many more were influenced by her prayers and the effects of her prayers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And from Susan, we go to Susan in Iowa, listening to EWTN radio through the EWTN app. Susan, what is your question? All right, and I think we lost communication with her, but we'll keep that on hold. And we go to Raymond, who's listening in San Antonio, Texas, to EWTN radio through Sirius XM 130. Raymond, your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni, please.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I have a question. I have a friend that went through the annulment process, and it was denied. So that means that she has a valid marriage. Does that person have any other means of appealing that decision?
That is a great question. So yes, there are options to appeal the denied annulment, and that information should have been included when she received notice of the denial or the refusal, the document, whatever documentation she received. She should have received notice that there's an opportunity to appeal that. And if she did not, I would circle back to the tribunal and ask them what is the process. At the same time, I would suggest that she find, again, a really good annulment advocate or a priest who's really well versed in these matters and go through the application that she submitted and see if there's any red flags that jump out, and also go through her story and her experience. Is there something that she didn't mention that should have been mentioned? Because, again, in a person's individual narrative, a fact might not be important, but when it comes to the tribunal, that fact might be very important. It might be critical. So I would encourage her to first contact the tribunal because she should have been given instruction about that. And secondly, reach out to a good annulment advocate, reach out to a good priest that has helped a lot of people with the annulment process, and find out if perhaps there are some things that she missed in the application. The final line of appeal is actually to appeal to Rome. And there was a famous American case in which a woman appealed. She came from a very well-known family, or she'd married into the Kennedy family. And she appealed, and her appeal was actually accepted, and the annulment, in her case, she wanted the annulment revoked, and it was actually revoked when the tribunal reviewed the the findings. They saw that the marriage was in fact intact. But so Rome is the final and last appeal, but there's a lot that can be done on the local level.
Did that answer your question, Raymond?
It does, because I've looked it up for her and I haven't found anything. And every time I hear that they're talking about annulment, it's a lot of people think it's something that it's automatically it is going to happen, and it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you get the tribunal to say, yes, the marriage is intact, and then the person says, so what do I do? This particular person married anyway, civilly, but I was just asking. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Raymond. And listening there in San Antonio, Texas, we go next to Fred in Leavenworth, Kansas, listening through AM 1090 KEXS. Fred, what is your question for Dr. Pia de Solenni?
Doctor, well, first, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And Doctor, I've been diagnosed with chronic and severe post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And to get to, I've been married 5 times, and never in a church. And I'm 70 years old, and I'd like to meet a gal, and get married.
Sure, Fred.
So I would suggest, Fred, that you. So are you attending a church now?
Oh yeah, I went to confession, and in reconciliation, and I'm in pretty good standing.
We're all practicing Catholics. We're all practicing at it, right?
Yeah, I'm practicing.
Yeah, well, we all are. What I would suggest, Fred, is that you could contact your parish and see if you can meet with an annulment advocate, and go ahead and have these 5 marriages examined now, because that way, when you meet the right person, you are ready to go. But it could be that depending on the circumstances, it could be that not one of the marriages was valid in the eyes of the church, and you could be actually completely open to be able to be married in the church. So I would say work on it now. That way, when the right person comes along, you're able to move on it. And I give that advice in general. I think a lot of people, they're worn out, when you've had a failed marriage, and so they're worn out. They're not able to. They just don't have the mental bandwidth to even begin the annulment process. And then what happens is time goes by, and they meet someone, and then this relationship is fantastic. Oh my gosh, I've met the person I'm supposed to marry. And then it's this awakening moment. Oh my gosh, I need to deal with my previous marriage or marriages. So I would encourage people to get on top of these, the marriages themselves, figuring out what is the actual status of them in the eyes of the church as soon as possible. Don't wait until you've met someone, because you're just going to prolong you're just going to prolong things, and it's going to take a lot longer. I would say get on it now.
All right. Thank you very much, Fred, there in Leavenworth, Kansas. Very quickly, let's go, please, to Susan in Iowa, listening through the EWTN app. We just have a couple of minutes, Susan. Please go right ahead.
Hello?
Susan, yes, please go right ahead.
Yes. I just have a question. My grandson is in a Catholic school, and the teacher he was supposed to have, they switched her to kindergarten class because she left the faith and went to become a Baptist. And anyhow, I struggle with the thing, why does she still have a job in Catholic school if she's, doesn't believe in the Catholic faith? And when my kids were in school, I found out years later that their teacher was a Methodist, and she kept saying, well, this is how we do it at Methodist school, or church, this is how we do it at Methodist church. And I just thought, well, that was inappropriate. She should have been teaching the Catholic ways instead of, integrating her ways. And so I didn't know if I should keep my mouth shut or if I should pursue this.
And so it can be a complex situation. I would suggest contacting the branch of your diocese that works with Catholic schools, or the superintendent's office, and asking them what their policy is, because a lot of it depends on what the teacher contracts say. It could be that the teacher contract does allow for this. It could be that it doesn't. But they're complex situations, and you need to find out what the rules are in your particular diocese.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pia de Solenni, moral theologian, filling in for Father Larry Richards. God bless you for your time with us.
It's been wonderful to be with you. Thanks.
My thanks again to Ryan Lilliengren and Ian Cabrera in our Orange County studios, and also to Jeff Burson with social media, Michael McCall producing, Matthew Gubinski, call screening. This is Elena Rodriguez filling in for Jack Williams. We have a team of substitutes today, and we also thank God above all. Thank you very much for listening. Open Line continues tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern with Colin Donovan answering your questions about theology. Next is Presta in the afternoon. Stay tuned.